it's Wanda from Alanda Craft, and today I'm going to show you how to calculate how much material you need to bind a quilt. So let's get started. Okay, so the first step is to determine the perimeter of our quilt. So we need to know how long our quilt is and how wide our quilt is. Now mine is 14 inches wide by 33 inches long. So what I need to do is I take 14 inches by 2, because I have a top and a bottom edge, and that's 28. And then I take 33 by 2, which is 66, and that's for these long edges. And that comes to 94 inches. Now I add on 10 inches, which is going to be for the overlap for when we come to finishing off our quilt. So the total perimeter of my quilt will be 104 inches. So now we need to determine how many strips we need to bind our quilt. Now I'm going to cut my strips at 2.5, so my binding will be 2.5 inches across the width of the fabric. Now before we get any further, we need to do a little bit of a calculation. So what we need to remember is that we need to take the perimeter of the quilt and we're going to divide that by the width of fabric. So the perimeter of our quilt we already established is 104 inches. Now your width of fabric generally comes from 42 to 44 inches. Now you can see mine here is measures 22 inches here, but it's double. So from selvage to selvage is your width of fabric. So in this case, my piece of fabric is 44 inches. So now I'm going to do my calculation. Now I'm going to use 40 inches in my calculation. And why am I doing that? Because I'm going to allow for the cutting off of the selvages and for the joining of the strips. So my calculation will be 104 inches, which is the perimeter of my quilt, divided by 40 inches. And that gives me 2.6 strips. Well, we're not going to use 2.6 strips, we're going to use 3. So we'll round it up to 3, and we're going to cut 3 strips at 2.5 from our piece of fabric. Now supposing you don't have a piece of material on hand, you need to actually go and buy the material for your binding. You'll need to know how much material to buy. So your calculation will be the number of strips that you determined in the last step by the width of your finished strip. Now in our instance we had 3 strips at 2.5 inches. So that's 3 times 2.5 gave us 7.5 inches. We'd round that up to 8 inches, and that would mean we would need to buy 1/4 of a yard. So it's quite simple, just remember the number of strips by the width of your strip. If you need to know how to bind a quilt, there'll be a link in the description below. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more great tutorials.